Right then, good afternoon. It's Saturday. Slightly different for me, I think, doing an episode on a Saturday. Just having some water. It's good to keep hydrated. So yes, it's Saturday. Got on a bit of a journey today, a bit of a car drive. Just took about 2 hours. So I'm not gonna talk for 2 hours, am I? That'd be a bit ridiculous. And most of it will probably be nonsense. And say what you see and all that sort of rubbish. But it might keep me occupied as I whisk as I float along in the BMW 535D Executive Saloon. So I'll probably start off talking about the car. I've set off now. Yeah, it's a lovely day, sunny. There's some cloud around, but it's actually making it not too sunny, which is quite nice. I know complaining about we never have a summer here, and then when we get some sunshine, yeah, complaining it's too sunny. But so it's not too bad a day. It's dry, relatively sunny, warm. My computer tells me it's 19.5. Wow. At least it's double figures. But I was hoping for 20 something. It is relatively early in the day. Maybe over the next couple of hours we might see 20 something. I hope so anyway. Obviously I'm in the car, got the air conditioning on, so it could be any temperature outside, I suppose. I've my window open a little bit here at the moment, which I'll probably close in a second once the temperature in the cabin stabilises. But the breeze is still cool enough outside to help cool the place down. So yeah, so I think I'll talk about the car for a while. I could easily get an hour out of this, but I'll try not to. So it's a 2006 model BMW. I've mentioned bits of this before. So this could be a recap for those of you who've forgotten little bits. And those of you not interested in cars, well, I'm going to say anyway. I don't know if you can. I think you can fast forward on these podcasts. I think you can go fast, or you can stop completely. Well, hey, there's an option. So if you feel you're getting a little bit bored, and you've something else to be doing, then yeah, feel free. Don't stay here on my behalf. I'll be talking anyway. So yes, it's a BMW, and I think unless you've been living in a cave, you would know that BMW is a German car manufacturer, traditionally associated with the, shall we say, the higher end, the more executive type car. In reality, some of the cars they produce you would call mainstream now. I think the brand has definitely expanded into the mainstream, but the car I'm driving today is very much firmly in the executive saloon department, and I'll talk a bit about it. So the 5 Series, so there's each model of a BMW, it's in a certain series, and I know there's new ones now to do with electric and stuff, but generally speaking it starts at the 1, there's 2, there's 3, there's 4, this is a 5, there's 6 Series, there's a 7 Series. The 8 Series I think was missing for many years, and I think has made a comeback. So this is the 5 Series. So this is quite a large car. This is you could fit 5 people, golf clubs, suitcases. It's a saloon, a sedan, so it's got a boot. It's not a hatchback, and there's a lot of room. Now, me personally, I think 4 people's enough. A back seat can accommodate 3. There's 3 seat belts, 3 proper seat belts, and there's 3 headrests as well. And I think for comfort, it is a comfortable place to be, the back, I have to say. Yeah, you only really want 2. Maybe have the armrest down, and there's cup holders. It's quite a nice place, quite a nice environment. You have your own temperature control back there as well. So, if you're I don't know, your temperature requirements differ from the front of the cabin, then you can make it hotter or cooler as required, which I think is nice. I didn't get many additional features for the rear seats, and there was lots of options, things like heated rear seats, massage rear seats, all this sort of stuff. And there was one big reason why I didn't. I don't sit back there. That's not the place I'm going to be I'm going to be hanging around in, so I didn't really care. But there are nice sets of options there if you are thinking of spending time in the back of the car. So it's a 535D, so the 5 is obviously the 5 Series. They're predominantly saloon cars and estate cars. So the estate car would be, if you imagine the boot is uplifted, so it's a bit like a hearse, that sort of shape, but gives you more load space, I suppose. I really don't like it. I don't like the style of an estate car because it looks like they took a car and they've just bolted this thing on to give you more room, and for me it just doesn't work. And there's very few estate cars I like. I think one notable exception will probably be the Volvo. I think it was a T5 many years ago. The police used to use them in the UK, and I've driven one. I thought it was very nice, and it looked pretty good for an estate car and for a Volvo. But I wouldn't be driving a Volvo anyway. So it's a 5 Series. A 3 is the size of the engine. So there's a 530 and the 535. So it's a 3 litre. Now, I think that's changed somewhat on the more recent cars, and it doesn't necessarily represent the capacity, the volume of the engine. On this car it does. So it's a 3 litre engine. The 5, so the 530 versus the 535, but the final 5 means it's the twin sequential turbo. So the 530D just has one turbo, and it's quite a large unit. And it's a turbo lag. This is the problem with a diesel. So, to get the performance at the low end, you introduce a turbo to get things moving. But it's driven by exhaust gases, so you're going to need some exhaust gases before it's really making a difference. So so the 530 just has a turbo, and it does suffer from turbo lag, and people are quite happy. They call with it. It's not the end of the world. I've driven with a single turbo on a diesel. You get used to driving. There's a slight delay when you want to put your foot down when you're setting off. But overall, once you're driving along and you're making good progress, it doesn't really matter about the turbo lag. So in this car, there's 2 turbos and they're in sequence. So essentially what happens is there's a small turbo and then a large turbo. So what happens when I put my foot down, it's the first turbo that sort of kicks in, and it kicks in quicker because it's smaller. And so there's very little turbo lag. It's pretty responsive at starting off, which is good. And then as it continues to accelerate, the larger turbo will kick in and gives you extra oomph. And it's quite a powerful car. This particular model has 272 brake horsepower, and it can do 0 to 100 kilometers, 0 to 60-ish, in under 6 seconds. I think the book says 5.6. And because it's an automatic, you really just have to put your foot down and let the computer take over. On a good surface, that is very much achievable, that sort of acceleration. But it's not all about the acceleration, it's not all about the performance, the speed, but it's about the comfort as well. I'm now on the motorway, I'm on the M50 heading northbound, doing about 100 kilometers an hour. Cruise control is in, I'm sitting here comfortable, the cabin's quiet, like a bit of road noise from the very large tyres, but nothing too excessive. It's a really nice place to be, and rev counters below 2,000 revs, and it's just wafting along nicely. This particular model is the sports model, so it's got sport suspension, which it's a little hard, I have to say. Would I get it now? Me being nearly 48, and maybe not as shall we say physically agile as I was when I was younger, I probably wouldn't get it now. But it does drive really, really well. Cornering, stability, it's a very stiff chassis as well as stiff suspension, and it is really good at cornering and manoeuvring at speed. It's also very good under hard deceleration as well as acceleration. You don't get the squatting that you get when you decelerate, brake hard, and you don't get the front end lifting when you accelerate hard, because this is a rear wheel drive vehicle. So essentially the engine is mounted longitudinal, which means it's in the direction of the car, if you like. And after it goes to the gearbox, there is a shaft that goes down the car to the rear axle, and that's where all the power in this car is presented. It's through the rear wheels, and that can be a challenge when there's so much power, and in the rear as well. And you can have issues with some cars where they have a tendency to skip out the back end, and that can be quite frightening. On this car though, there's a lot of electronic features that kick in, stability control, traction control, to ensure that there's nothing messy happens. Now you can turn them down a bit for maybe when you're driving in snow and things like that, and you can also switch them off, but I don't do that. Maybe if it was on a racetrack, but you can still have a really good driving experience with them enabled. So yeah, I'm happy to leave them in there and then drive a little bit safer and get to where I'm going. I mean, that's always the goal, isn't it? So that's the engine, I suppose. It's an EEC4 emission control system on it as well, and that was a challenge for the designers, because whenever they control the emissions from the exhaust, well, it means you lose performance, don't you? So the exhaust gases are actually recirculated. They don't all go through the catalytic converter, so the particulate filter. Some are recirculated into the induction into the engine. This reduces the temperature of the cylinders. By reducing the temperature of the cylinders, you reduce the amount of the big dirty particles, the NOx particles coming out the engine, which is good for the trees, the birds, and I suppose the environment as well. Me personally, I'm not sure how much of an impact the EGR system actually has on that, but it does reduce performance slightly, and I think on my particular car there is an issue with it at the moment, but it's not affecting the driving performance, so I'm not too worried about it at the moment. There is a particulate filter on this car. It's quite a nice device. So diesels are very sooty cars. You get a lot of sooty and sweep. You get a lot of soot coming out the back end, like a black thick smoke under acceleration and things like that. On this car, that's sort of filtered out, so you never see any black smoke. It's quite nice. Well, this car now is, I don't know how old it is now. It's 12 years old. 12 and a half years old, so nothing. They test it every year and there's nothing coming out the back. Now there is occasionally something does come out of the exhaust, and it's like a white mist, like something you'd see if it was a little bit foggy, or maybe some supernatural scene of a movie. Maybe you'd see this wispy white, very light mist. And what happens is it goes through a cycle every so often where the soot builds up in the filter and it burns it off. And as it burns it off, you get this lovely wispy white vapour. And I think it's, to see that coming out the exhaust, that's not a bad thing. Anyway, very, very rare it does that, and usually only if you do a lot of short journeys. If you do the sort of journey I'm doing now, I'm thinking I'm going to do about 150 kilometres on this particular journey, then that's going to keep it well blown out, all the sooty bits. What else can I say about the car? Well, the base model was €80,000 in 2007. That's when €80,000 was a lot of money. I picked some options. I think I felt it was the only time I'm going to have the car that I really wanted. I'm actually just passing the dealership where I got the car. It's in North Dublin. I'm not going to name the dealership. Not a big fan of theirs now, actually, to be honest, for all sorts of reasons. But that's where it came from. So yes, the options list, and I think I've said before about options in certain cars. I sort of like having that, ability to pick things that you want. It's gives you sort of a nice feeling that you're customizing it to what you want. So I like that. On the other hand, it means they give you a price at the beginning, and you're sort of going, oh well, that's really the low end, isn't it? That's not going to be what you want. That's just going to be, if you just want to save me, I'm getting an executive saloon. What, you want to cut costs? You don't want, well, don't look at an executive saloon, look at a hybrid or something, some other crappy car. But, so they sort of draw you in a little bit, and they know this, don't they, and okay. So the options list was quite weighty. I think it's changed now a little bit. I don't go on the website very often. I don't like to torture myself about all the cars I'd like to have, but I was there recently, and they seem to be bundling a lot of the features together. Maybe it's a realisation that there's certain features you really want to have. If you're sort of a guy like me, very tech savvy, I work in the tech industry, it's obviously an interest of mine, otherwise I wouldn't still be doing this. So I'm looking at the gadgets. I want the gadgets. I want something that I'm going to use every day. That was the main criteria. And if it's a gadget and it makes my life easier, it's all good. So the options list. So some of the options were ones I didn't feel I'd ever use, so I didn't get. Some I liked from a safety perspective. I felt, I'm not saying necessarily made your life easier, but on a long journey, it might reduce the workload. And when you get to your destination, you're not as tired as maybe you would have been in a different car. And I think cabin noise, interestingly enough, is very important. I find when I've been flying and traveling in general, any noise, even if it's not very loud, but any noise that's constant, yeah, it can be quite annoying and extremely tiring when you get to your destination. So having a pretty quiet cabin, that's definitely important for me. I understand that there's quite a couple £100 in weight of soundproofing in this car, and I'm glad there is. I'm happy to trade off a bit of fuel economy for that, because it just makes life a lot easier when you're doing long journeys. And one thing I would say about the fuel economy, for a car of this performance, it can be driven very economically, really economically. For a car of this size, because it's diesel as well, that's good, I like that. Okay, if you're heavy on the right foot and you're doing a lot of urban acceleration, that's never going to be economical, is it? So, but I like that. I like the way that, you know, you can drive this very economically, this car. So yeah, the options list. So I think one of the things I wanted was leather seats. At the time, I had young children. You know, it's hard for them not to make a mess, and it'd be a bit silly of me to say to the kids, like, you know, don't make a mess, especially when they're very young. They're not doing it on purpose. They're just kids, you know. So, and I think the fabric seats are rubbish for keeping clean with children. They're really bad. I mean, from my perspective, all the cars I'd had pretty much my whole life had been with fabric seats, and they were fine, but you know, they get very dirty, they look very tired, and yeah, it's not great. So leather seats, and I went for black leather. I'd had beige leather before in a 3 Series 320 coupe, and I have seen on some of the cars how it goes dark, it almost goes black nearly, and it looks very tired. And I thought, well, I didn't want that, so I'm going to start off with the black. There's a few disadvantages with black leather that you might not expect. One of them is heat. If it is sunny and the car gets very hot, I mean, the seats get to the point where you literally couldn't sit in them until they cool down. And then there's the flip side, that if it's a winter's morning and you get into the car, wow, it can be cold on you. You know, if you have to wear a jacket in the car, which I'm not a big fan of. I know a lot of people do. Driving to work, they don't bother taking the jacket off, getting in the car, wear, hey, whatever. For me, I think it restricts movement a little bit. I like to be able to move around, I like to be able to steer, you know, play with the radio, whatever. And I think I lose that a little bit. Yeah, I lose it a little bit if there's a big bulky jacket on. So I don't like driving in a jacket. So heated seats, leather seats, yeah, check. Heated seats, well, in the front. I don't care about the back. You could get them heated in the back as well. The kids might play with them, but there's no real point for me having them. So yeah, so heated front seats, and there's 3 settings, and they're pretty good. They heat up really quick. They heat up quicker than the car does, which is good. So that was a couple of basic ones, and then I looked at the rear view mirror, and there was the option to have the rear view mirror automatically dim when there's, you know, at night you're driving at night and there's cars behind you, and they're dazzling you, so it automatically does that. It's got a little sensor. I also got electrically foldable mirrors. It wasn't very expensive, I think about €150 for that, but they're also dim as well. So it sort of completes the package in that sense. So that's quite nice. I think the only complaints I'd have about the foldable mirrors, and it is possible to program them so it's automatic, so that when you know, get out the car, lock the doors or unlock the doors, they fold automatically. Mine isn't programmed to do that, but it could be. My only complaint is the button I use to do that. There's no light on it. It's one of the few buttons in this car that has no light on it. So at night time, if you don't know where the button is, and that's essentially when I picked the car up, yeah, it was a bit interesting to find the button, you know. So what else do we have? Well, I suppose I've got to talk about the iDrive computer system. And I think at the time when it came out, people used to nickname it iCrash as opposed to iDrive. Well, I like it. It's quite nice. It's got a little control device, like an upturned pie dish, in the center console, and it's force feedback as well. So when you click and you go through menus, it's quite nice. You know, it probably looks a bit old-fashioned now, but 12 years ago it was pretty good now. I went for the professional navigation system, so it's a larger screen. I think it's 7 inches, 7 or 8, 7.7 inches, something like that diagonal. It's full colour, and it's got a few features in it. You can look at the radio stations. It's got Bluetooth for, you know, my iPhone today, hooked into the Bluetooth, no problem. Doesn't stream audio, that's one thing I would say. So there's no audio connectivity in terms of music, but in terms of making phone calls, the phone book, it's all good. Also the navigation system, well, it's a DVD. There's an extra slot just below the CD player, and it's for DVDs, and it's for navigation DVDs only. You can't play movies or any other type of DVD. I think you might be able to put in a DVD full of MP3 music. That may work. I did hear about someone doing that. But the reality is a CD is MP3 compatible, and that's a lot of music on a CD. But yeah, so there's a little unknown secret feature there. But you basically get these maps from BMW on a DVD, and you stick it in. Now, they're not cheap, these maps. They're quite expensive, but they used to have a special deal that if you give them the old disc back, they give you a new one for €100, which I don't think was too bad to update. Yeah, it wasn't too bad. Looking at the maps I have now, they're pretty okay for Ireland. They're not the latest by any means, but all the major roads that I go on are on there. And it's, you know, it's a handy little thing sometimes just to flick into it. You've got into it there now, and can zoom in and out. It's really good. You've also got a trip computer, you can put in destination and things like that. So I think it's quite a good system for the time. There are better now, BMW systems are better now. But anyway, this is a 12-year-old system, so it's, I think it's pretty good. So, what else can we see here now? So, that's to mention the Bluetooth. There's also voice control, which I've probably mentioned before. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. I'm gonna try it now. Let's see if we can get this to work live, as it were. So let's see if I can put some music on. I don't know what music is in this player, so I do apologise if it's rubbish, but let's just see if we can get this to work now. CD 1, track 1.
No CD in compartment 1.
That's fair enough. Track 1.
I didn't understand you, please repeat.
Track 1. Track 1.
Options. Select a scale, for example, scale 5 kilometers, or say navigation info on, navigation info off, start guidance, stop guidance, atlas, voice input cancelled.
I think that was a bit of a disaster. I'm going to try again now, okay. Maybe it's my strange accent, and I'm sure there's people out there can't understand me, so... And it always goes wrong when I'm demonstrating. It's fine when there's no one listening, you know. But here we go again. Track 4.
I didn't understand you, please repeat.
Oh. CD, track 4.
Disk and drive is unreadable or not supported.
Oh. Interesting. It came up with DVD drive briefly there, so I mustn't have a CD in. What a dab. That was a pretty unmitigated disaster. Let's see if there's a CD. Oh, unfortunately there is a CD in there. Oh, it's gone back in again. Yeah, there is a CD in my CD player. I'm gonna try again. Let's do this again. I know you're probably getting bored at this stage. This is going to be the last time now. And it's playing it automatically now. Hold on. Let's try and do it. CD, track 3.
Track 3.
Oh, see, when it wants to, it works. Yeah, it's not been temperamental, but I won't play too much of that. I don't want any copyright infringements. So there is a feature that sometimes works, and yeah. So that's voice control, and I think you probably heard the nice young lady was talking about. I can do navigation with it, and in the book it gives you a whole set of commands you could use. A lot of them don't seem intuitive to me, so I don't do it, you know. Just don't do it. But it's a feature, I suppose. Just having a look around now, what else have I got in here? That's well, it's got air conditioning and climate control. I think that was pretty much standard. I do have an interesting feature that a lot of cars of this era didn't have. It's quite expensive. It was around €2,000, and that's a big outlay for an option in a car. And it's heads-up display. Now, you might have heard of the term heads-up display or HUD. It used to be used in fighter planes, and I believe now it's much more mainstream that you do get it in cars, you get it in planes as well, commercial airliners. And essentially what it is, so where my steering wheel is at the moment, if I go towards the windscreen, there, that part of the dashboard, there is actually an LED screen, and it is putting up onto my windscreen an image. And this image looks like it's at the end of the bonnet. It looks like it's floating at the edge of the bonnet, so you don't have to refocus your eyes when you're driving along, basically. And you can put all sorts of stuff on this display. It's configurable. The main things I have on it are the speed, and I also have the navigation. You can put warning messages, error messages and other stuff on there as well, but I don't bother with that. So when I lock on my cruise control, I've locked it on there now at a certain speed, and it tells me it's locked on, and I can see the speed in kilometers per hour. Now this car is an Irish BMW in the sense of it was designed for the Irish market, so it was ordered for the Irish market, so there's no miles per hour on the speedo, there's only kilometers per hour, which is sort of okay unless you're in the UK, which is miles per hour. But it's nice to have the heads-up display because I can turn that into miles per hour. There's a configuration in the menu, a setting, and I can go from there to miles per hour, which is sort of nice. I mean, I have a rough idea now what the speed is in miles per hour, but if I didn't, well, it's just a handy little thing to have. And I think it does reduce on the workload. I'm looking at the dashboard less, you know, I'm looking ahead more, I'm more spatially aware, so it seems quite nice. I think it works quite well, you know. So the heads-up display, it's an unusual option. I haven't seen it on any cars of this era, you know, second-hand anyway. I haven't seen that sort of thing spec before, but it's nice. I like it, and I did say to myself, "Well, I use this every day. It's an expensive feature," and I do. I use it every time I use the car, and I think it's a safety feature, which is good. So moving on, headlights. So the headlights are quite interesting. The xenon headlights. So that was extra money for those. They give a nice sort of bluey white light, which is quite bright. It's meant not to dazzle as much. But there's a few features I got in addition to the xenon headlights. They're quite unusual. One is the active headlights. So when I turn into a corner, the headlights turn slightly, so you're actually lighting up the direction you're going in, as opposed to, well, the side of the road. So that's quite I think that's a safety feature. That seems to work very well, you know. They've also got another feature that you can enable or disable called high beam assist. So high beam assist, essentially, you enable that feature and it stays at full beam all the time, which is brilliant. You can see where you're going. And then if it detects a car, the rear of a car or oncoming traffic, it dips. And it does it automatically. It is really intelligent. It's literally a camera that's mounted forward facing behind the rear view mirror. And it works really well. And it does work. I mean, it's another one of those things. It's the workload is reduced, you know, because a lot of people are making the mistake of always driving in dipped headlights, even when there's no one else around, when full beam would make more sense. And this system means you just don't have to worry about it. It will do full beam all the time, and then whenever it detects other cars, it dips. And yeah, it's pretty good now, you know. So I quite like that feature. I think I mentioned before that my windscreen wipers, they're automatic. You can do them manually, but you can switch on the feature, and it detects rain hitting the windscreen, and it adjusts the speed accordingly depending on the conditions and the speed. If you're in I don't know, if you're in traffic or not moving, it stops the wipers going, which is quite nice. It just means it saves the rubber a little bit. And also, an interesting little feature not a lot of people know about on this car is when it detects rain, the actual brake pads, they massage the discs. They basically keep the discs dry. They stop water accumulating. And the advantage with this is, well, the brake pads are quite porous and you don't want them getting soggy. So it just means that when you do need the braking, it's there, it's ready for you. And it's a nice little safety feature. And just one of those details that I think BMW is synonymous for. I'm not sure if any other car has it or if ever BMW ever carried on doing it. But it just gives me that little extra bit of comfort that, yeah, it's just an extra safety there now with that. So, another feature that was quite expensive, and you probably heard a little bit of it earlier, is the sound system. So, I suppose by today's standards, the inputs are quite basic. There's a plug, a mini jack plug you can put in a source, an auxiliary source you can listen to. There's no DAB radio, it's just FM radio. And it's a CD and MP3. And I've also got a 6-disc CD loader in the glove box. But it's a Harman Kardon 7.1 surround sound system. So the cabin it's completely covered in speakers, basically. So on the front of the dashboard I can see the center speaker, and that's where you get all the vocals when there's music playing. There's 2 subwoofers, there's one under each of the front seats, which convey the bass, which are absolutely incredible. And then the doors themselves and the rear parcel shelf have the suite of speakers. Near the wing mirrors there's tweeters. So it's pretty much fully loaded speaker-wise. And the surround sound really does work. It's very impressive. And it's one of the best speaker systems I've ever had. But that was an €1,800 premium. And again, it's a lot. But for me, it came down to would I use it every day? Would I enjoy it? And yes, I do. So yeah, I'm pretty pleased with that, you know. There's a few other features in the car. I mentioned the cruise control earlier on. I also have the ultrasonic parking system. So it's on front and rear sensors, so you can essentially it makes parking so much easier. You should never really be bumping into anything when you've got those sensors. They're very accurate, very fast, and the display is very helpful. So it's pretty good, you know. Just having a drink of water. I seem to have been talking for quite a long time now. I'm actually just looking where I am now. I'm on the M1 motorway. I think I've been on here before during one of the episodes. Luckily it's not wet today. Hopefully there'll be no cars and bushes. I've got a few cars coming up behind me when I'm in the second lane, the outside lane. I have to keep pulling in. They're obviously in a bit of a hurry today. I hope they drive carefully. I mean, people say speed kills, and obviously it's a big factor because the faster you go, it's easier to lose control. And when you lose control, well, but that's not the only thing. I think speed in itself, in certain conditions, I think it's okay to be driving fast, making brisk progress. And the speed I'm doing today, I think, is pretty reasonable. I'm not having to concentrate too much on driving. The cruise control is looking after the speed. I just have to keep it in the lane, basically, in the right direction. I'm just coming up to a toll plaza now. This is Adrada, just before the Mary Macaulay's bridge across the Boyne. I'm just slowing down now. So I have a tag, which, it's the best way of doing it. The toll's €1.90, and this is for this section of the motorway, including the bridge, was private money, public-private partnership, and this is how we pay them back. I think I've spoken a bit at length about tolls and everything else. I actually think this should be free for people who are local. I think that'd be only fair. But I think maybe they don't want to clog this up. They want people to stick on the local roads. I don't know, but I think it'd be brilliant for them. Obviously, if you're going from Dublin to Belfast, this is fantastic though. I'm just accelerating here. There's a 7 Series on my left-hand side. I think he's got notions he's going to get ahead of me, but he's not today. So yes, what was I just talking about now? The car and the options. Yeah, all the options. The crazy options. I think that's probably most of the options now that I've covered. The sport suspension. There's some silly ones which I sort of had to have. One is the ceiling of the car is anthracite padded. I suppose if you're ever unfortunate enough to hit it with your head, it's quite soft. That was an extra cost option. I also had it de-chromed. So there used to be on most 5 Series there's a chrome trim. And yeah, it's just black basically. And it looks stylish. I'm not sure if that was more expensive or not now. That could be a free option, but it does look a bit different, and I quite like that. I've just got the 7 Series now behind me. I think as soon as I pull in at some point, he's going to overtake me. It's a 730 he's driving. It's quite a new one. It's 12, so it's only 7 years old, this one. He's got the xenon headlights as well. That 7 Series is essentially a bigger version of this. Usually they have more features. It's more executive, more expensive, larger, whatever. But yeah, I'm going to pull in down a second in front of a little Volkswagen Tiguan and let him go past. I don't like people coming up behind me, and I'm not going to go any faster today. I'm making good progress. I'll get to where I'm going in a reasonable time, and that suits me. So yeah, I think that's all the features of the car. It does have a key to start the engine and stuff, but it's interesting. It's a button that starts the engine, so the key doesn't turn. You put the key into a receptacle, and then you press the button to start the engine. I think what's interesting is that key, there's like a memory to it. So, you know, things like radio and temperature, all that sort of stuff is programmed into the key, you know, so when you use it. So if your second key goes in, that's the same, which is quite nice. It means to get the cabin set up how you want it, you know. The seat is, it's a semi-electric seat. So some of the features of the seat are electric and some are manual. So forward and backward and tilt is manual, but everything else is electric. The headrest isn't electric. So the reg and the height of the seat is electrically adjustable, and that's nice. It would be nice to, there was the option to have electric seats. These are sports seats, so that was the option I went for. The comfort seats, however, there was a whole load of options around those. You get fully electric seats, electric rear view mirror that adjusts, electric steering wheel, so that adjusts. You get all these sorts of things.